Hello and welcome to this episode of Lightboat, Aliyah Stories. Hi, this is David, and you are back to Lightboat, Aliyah Stories. This is the first episode where we're going to actually have a guest. Yoni Cooper is an Aliyah Advisor with Nefesh BNefesh. Nefesh BNefesh is the organization that is helping me make Aliyah. And I wanted to ask Yoni to come on the show to tell us about his experience making Aliyah and all about Nefesh BNefesh, so that if you're interested or to know about how you can make Aliyah and how Nefesh BNefesh can help you, this episode will tell you all about it. So let's welcome Yoni Cooper to the program. Yoni, welcome to the pod, as they say. I'm really happy for you to be my guest on this episode of Lightboat. Can you please introduce yourself to the audience and tell us who you are and who you work for?
My name is Yoni Cooper, and I'm honored to be with you, David. Thank you for having me. I'm an Aliyah Advisor here at Nefesh BNefesh, and I've been here for a little while, and it's my pleasure and honor to help people fulfill their dream of making Aliyah.
Yoni, tell me a little bit about you and your Aliyah experience. How long have you been in the country, and how did you make Aliyah?
Okay. So I made Aliyah at the end of 2006. I was working for APAC in Los Angeles, helping to strengthen the U.S.-Israel relationship out there. And there was something inside of me that told me that if I didn't make the step right now and to move to Israel, I'd never do it. And so I knew I needed to make a change. I wanted to be there. It was right after the Second Lebanon War, and I wanted to also be a paratrooper in the Army. And so I moved, and I went out through the testings to be part of the paratroopers. I was accepted into the special forces of the paratroopers. I served there. I then went on to get a master's degree in counterterrorism and homeland security, and began my career in fundraising and resource development for different organizations. And after 15 years of doing fundraising and working with great Jewish organizations, I made my way to another fabulous Jewish organization, Nefesh BNefesh, where today I serve as an Aliyah Advisor.
Amazing. So when you came as a 24-year-old, did you have family here? Did you know anyone? Or did you have any connections?
So, yes and no, meaning I knew all of Israel. Israel was part of my heart, part of my prayers growing up in synagogue, at day school, at my summer camp. When we spoke about Zion and Yerushalayim, it felt like home to me. So in one sense, I had a lot of family there because all of Israel was my family. In another sense, no, I had no immediate family. I had very little connections or friends there. At 24, I was pretty much alone, and I served in the army as a chayal boded, as a lone soldier. It was challenging, but I did meet a cute girl at a bar right before I got into the army who ended up agreeing to be my wife, and we got married in the middle of the army. And since then, we've been growing our family, and so now I do have family here. I have 3 children and a wife and some in-laws. My sister also made Aliyah with Nefesh BNefesh a couple years after me. And thank God, about a year and a half ago, my parents also came here to make Aliyah. So I was the first, but now I've got some family here in Israel.
Unbelievable. Amazing. I mean, and your wife, was she an Oleh or was she a Sabra?
My wife came here in about 1991 with her family. So she was born, she was raised in Northern California, and she came here with her family. They came for a summer. And at the end of the summer, they said, okay, we're going to stay just for a year. And at the end of the year, they said, well, we're going to make Aliyah. And so she's been here ever since. She's an art therapist here in Jerusalem. If anybody's looking for a good art therapist, I got a connection.
Amazing. Wow, that's awesome. So 2 Californians. And can you tell us about Nefesh BNefesh, how it was founded, and why?
Sure, I'd be thrilled to tell you about our history. It was about 2002 when our current executive director, Rabbi Yoshua Fass, was a community rabbi in southern Florida. And he unfortunately suffered some family tragedy, a terrorist attack here in Israel where a family member was killed. And he explained that in the face of that tragedy, he felt a strong calling. And together with one of his friends, Tony Gelbart, our current chairman of the board, they began to talk about Aliyah. And they decided that they wanted to make Aliyah, but not just them. They wanted to help other people make Aliyah. And when they spoke to others in their community, they got a lot of the same answers and a lot of the same word. And that word was but. Yes, we'd love to make Aliyah, but the economy. Yes, we'd love to make Aliyah, but I don't know how to get a job. We'd love to make Aliyah, but the bureaucracy. But. And it became fairly clear that something needed to change and that something was needed to be able to, something, someone, some organization, some initiative was needed to be able to empower people to get over those buts and to come to Israel. And that's really how we were born.
Can you tell us what is Nefesh BNefesh's mission and objectives in supporting immigration to Israel?
Absolutely. Very simply, we facilitate and celebrate Aliyah. When I say Aliyah, we mean the making Aliyah is immigrating to the state of Israel. We advocate for olim. Olim are people that have made Aliyah. And we educate across the world and here in Israel for a stronger connection to Israel.
And so, what sort of services do you offer to olim?
So we offer a range of services, what I like to call, when talking to the people I'm working with, the two sides of the Aliyah coin, which is the planning side. We work on what life looks like here, Hebrew, employment, education, communities. And then we work on the other side of Aliyah, which is the bureaucratic and processing side. What kind of documents are required and what is the bureaucratic process going to look like? And so a lot of our services have to do with that. We do have a lot of departments and services, and where we can help, we certainly do. And where we don't have that expertise, we have built up incredible partnerships with people and organizations in Israel and beyond that we certainly tell people about and help them connect with those resources.
And so, you specifically, what's your specific job within the process?
So I am an Aliyah Advisor. I'm part of the Aliyah guidance team here at Nefesh BNefesh. And my job is that once people reach out to our organization and express their interest in making Aliyah, they are then assigned an Aliyah Advisor like myself. I have a portfolio of olim that are planning to make Aliyah, and I work with them on everything we just spoke about, the planning and the processing. So if they have children, we talk about education and children's framework. If they're a single person in their 20s, we talk about more education and employment and so on and so forth. I work with my olim as individuals. We see each olah as a world unto themselves. And so each olah has different needs, different challenges. And again, I feel blessed to be able to be part of that process.
You were lucky. You got me. So, and I got you. So I've been lucky so far, I think. So, let's not talk about once you get to the country. Let's talk about
Mhm.
the whole first part,
Sure.
because that's where I am right now. So, what are the typical steps involved in the immigration process for someone who's seeking to make Aliyah?
The first step is to open an application. Open an application at our website, nbn.org.il. And when you come to our website, which also has great information there to help you make that decision whether Aliyah is right for you, once you open up an application, the next step is to be connected with Aliyah advisors like myself once the olah is ready to make Aliyah. And I work with them on all of those issues that we spoke about. And a main part of that is the documentation process. So the next large part is gathering documents, personal documents, marriage certificates, birth certificates, divorce certificates, passports, letters from communities, and so on and so forth. So we work a lot on the gathering of the documents. We build a plan together to make sure that they have a successful Aliyah. I like to say my job as an Aliyah advisor is not just to, rush people on the plane, but it's to ensure that they stay in Israel. And before Nefesh BNefesh was around, we saw something like 60 or 70% of people from North America after 1 year packing up their stuff and leaving the country.
Wow.
There are many reasons for this. Yeah, it's a difficult process. It's a difficult country sometimes to live. And so after Nefesh BNefesh was created, we've now seen that number plummet to something like 10% of people from North America after a year actually leaving the country, 90% of people staying. And so I mention that because a large part of the process of what we do is making sure there's a strong plan in place to ensure a successful Aliyah. So we gather documents, we build a plan, and then of course, if you're outside of the country, if you're not in Israel, then you'll have an interview with our partner, the Jewish Agency.
So the Jewish Agency is the government agency.
The Jewish Agency is a quasi-governmental organization that is responsible for Aliyah around the world.
So okay, so first off, uh, Nefesh BeNefesh is primarily for folks from the U.S., correct?
Nefesh BNefesh has a mandate to work with North American Jews or people from North America, from Canada and the US.
Okay, Canada.
And outside of Canada and the US, the Jewish Agency, our partners here, are responsible for Aliyah from outside of North America.
Okay. Oh, so they handle. So Jewish Agency handles everything outside of North America. So UK, France, Latin America, wherever else in the world.
Correct.
Got it. Okay.
Correct, but just to be clear, that the Jewish Agency, as our partner in this process, is also involved in the process in North America. But the address for filling out applications and starting the process starts with Nefesh BNefesh.
Got it. Okay. So so essentially, so anyone from anywhere can go to Nefesh BeNefesh first, and then you can connect them onwards if that's correct.
Anybody from anywhere can use our resources, can contact us, and if someone is not eligible to be making Aliyah through Nefesh BNefesh, we of course will refer them to the right bodies, the Jewish Agency, namely, as the correct body.
Got it. Okay. So I'm putting together all of my documents, and I'm only one person, so I don't have to worry about a partner or kids or anything like that. And so you have to get all of your documents. So you've got to get your birth certificate, and you have to get either an original, right? And you have to get copies of your passports and all this needs to be either notarized and apostilled, right?
So, depending on the document, it needs to either be notarized or with an apostille. In short, an apostille is a official document. It's an international convention that's signed on to by countries around the world, allowing one country to view the legal documents of another country. And so, the U.S. and Israel, and now Canada and Israel, are also all signed on to the convention. And so, some of the personal documents require this piece of paper, an apostille, so that the government of Israel can see that it's valid. But yes, some of them have to be authenticated through a notary, through an apostille.
And one of the other aspects and one of the limitations in the law of return actually is that even if you're Jewish and but you have a violent criminal history, you actually can't make avail of the law of return. And so one of the things is that you have to get a criminal check, correct?
Correct. One of the documents that you have to get is a criminal background check. If you have a criminal background, that does not automatically invalidate you from making Aliyah. It does change the process a little bit. There'll be additional requirements for documentation, some interviews, but having a criminal background is something that many people have, and it does not exclude you from making Aliyah.
Okay, and then the other thing is you need to be able to authenticate that you are in fact Jewish, and so now I thought I was gonna be able to get in on the basis of my parents have made Aliyah, they proved that they were Jewish. I can prove that I'm their kid, uh, ipso facto Jew, but that's not the case. I have to still go
Right.
get a letter from a rabbi, right? So tell me a little bit about like what is that level of authentication necessary?
So this is a requirement through our partner, the Jewish Agency, in order to see the Jewish roots of people. As you mentioned, the law of return states that if you have one Jewish grandparent, you're eligible for Aliyah. So these letters, depending on the person's status, would state the person's connection to Judaism, if they were born as a Jew, if they're currently a Jew, and the Jewish Agency takes these letters and reviews these letters as part of the rest of the critical documentation. They are the ones who are reviewing the letters to determine eligibility.
Got it. Okay. What's the part of the government that manages this? It's this Department of Interior. Is that what it is?
So the main government offices that we work with Aliyah is the Ministry of Interior and the Ministry of Aliyah and Absorption. Those are the two main ministries we work with.
And so between Nefesh BNefesh and the Jewish Agency, everything goes to the government for them to review all the documents, correct?
Correct. Everything will be reviewed by the Jewish Agency and the relevant government authorities. And that happens once after we help our people who are going through Nefesh BNefesh. We help them gather the documents. We make sure they are providing everything that's been requested by the government. And then we have the government and the Jewish Agency review their Aliyah file.
Okay, so I'm doing it a little bit differently. So we're going to talk about how I'm doing it after because I'm more of the exception than the rule. So typically, let's say I were coming from the U.S. and so I've signed up with Nefesh BNefesh and I've uploaded all of my documents to your very nice website. I've got all my documents. What happens next?
So when you're outside of the country, the next step is that we review your file, we make sure everything looks right, and when you're ready and we're ready to pass it on, we ask the Jewish Agency to reach out and to schedule an interview with you. They'll go over a lot of the same information that we went over together. They'll check your documents. And at the end of the day, they'll provide an approval for Aliyah. They'll also help you obtain an Aliyah visa that goes in your passport, your U.S. or your Canadian passport, and then we will, through Nefesh BNefesh, if appropriate and if eligible, we'll help you book a flight to Israel. Interviews happen both on Zoom and in person. I believe if you interview not in person, you do need to present your original documents in another way, so you have to send them into an office. But I believe, depending on the office and depending on how the Jewish Agency is operating in the area that you're from, it could be a Zoom or in person. The Jewish Agency has offices in most major Jewish cities, and people who don't live near those major cities will have opportunities to present their documents in another way or to do it online.
So tell me about the Nefesh BNefesh flights. You mentioned earlier that one of the benefits potentially is that you can get a free flight to come to Israel to make Aliyah, and you can have that done through Nefesh BNefesh. So tell me about those flights.
So Nefesh BNefesh helps book people on these flights. The government of Israel and the Jewish Agency are the ones who are responsible, or the government is responsible for funding those flights for people that do need the tickets. There are flights leaving all the time throughout the year from North America. There are flights with a few olim on them. There are flights with dozens of olim on them. I'll say that about 60% of our olim are flying in the summer times in July or August. That's our busy season. But there are people coming in all the time. Just last week, I believe we had 25 people on a flight last week. This morning, a few people arrived as well. Even during these challenging times, people are coming in almost every day coming into the country.
There's another way that you can make Aliyah, which is if you're already in the country, right? So that's how I happen to be doing it. So
Yep.
I'm lucky I have family already in Israel. What's the difference when you make Aliyah from already being in the country?
The process of making Aliyah, whether you're in the country or outside of the country, is very similar. The documents are very similar. There are some differences. The main difference when it comes to your rights and benefits is that when you make Aliyah within the country, you do forego that potentially free flight that would be offered from North America. Besides for that plane ticket, the rights and benefits are the same. Again, the documentation is a little different. The process is once we have all of the documentation, we will contact our partners at the Ministry of Interior and ask them to schedule an appointment to come into the ministry. And we bring a few dozen people at once to the government ministries. This morning I was in Tel Aviv helping about a dozen people this time make Aliyah as well. You go into the ministry, and if everything checks out, then there's, God forbid, or hopefully there's no problems. You come into the ministry as a resident of the U.S., a citizen of the U.S., and you leave also as a citizen of the state of Israel.
Amazing. All right, that's my next step. So hopefully, Mirz Hashem, mid-May, we're going to be going to the ministry together and coming out one extra citizen, being me. Can you share any success stories or memorable experiences of olim that you've helped through the process? So anyone famous?
Yeah, some people, but when you ask that question, I'm thinking about a conversation I had yesterday with somebody. Part of the beautiful part of my job is I get to speak to incredible people like yourself and other people from around North America and in the country who share a love for Israel and want to be here in Israel and want to make Aliyah. But the woman I spoke to yesterday, 35 years old, and she said, for like 15 years, I've been trying to make Aliyah, and it just seems so daunting, and I feel overwhelmed. And she, at the end of our conversation, she said, Yoni, I've been trying for so long, and I just have not known how to proceed. And now she said, I feel like a weight has been lifted off my shoulders, and now I can enjoy Pesach. And so these are the stories that keep me going. People who want to make Aliyah, have the passion, have the drive, but just don't know where to start and are intimidated by the bureaucratic process, and just very concerned. And so this is what we do, and this is what I do with my time. It's a real blessing and a pleasure to empower people to make this change in their life.
And there's a fee that you have to pay to get access to Nefesh services, right? It's like $250 or something like that.
It depends on if you're coming with a family, if you're making Aliyah from inside of the country, outside of the country. There is an application fee that needs to be paid before of the time of Aliyah.
A big benefit of having Nefesh BNefesh working with you is that you've got someone else on your side, and you have someone that can explain it to you. And the
Absolutely.
amount of time that one would spend probably wasting time with the government and wasting time looking things up, time is money, and to me that money is
Oh yeah.
incredibly well spent. So
No.
I think it's a great, I think it's been great so far, and completely a great service that's well worth the fee. Clearly a big supporter. So, last question. Any advice that you would give someone who is potentially thinking
Hmm.
about making Aliyah?
Oh, got a lot of. You want good advice or bad advice? Is that I can.
Good advice. Good
Good
advice.
advice. So I'll say it's a process. The Aliyah process, of course, it's a process, and it can be a long process, and it can be challenging. Um, so that's one. Just be aware that it's a long process, and it doesn't happen overnight. When I think of like best advice, though, is I'd say that you should try to be quote unquote more Israeli. What does that mean? Israelis like to use the word dugri. Dugri is kind of being straightforward, being tachlis, putting it all out there. So I say this because the more Israeli you can be in quotations, meaning when you don't know something, you say, I don't know. And when something's not clear, you say, hold on, that's not clear. And if you have a question, you say, wait a minute, I have a question. If you're not straightforward and you're not clear, you're going to miss things. You're going to get confused. So the more you can stand up and say, I, Yoni, I need some help, or I'm not clear about this. And as someone who made Aliyah 17 years ago through Nefesh BNefesh, I'm still learning how to be more Israeli. It's not something you pick up immediately, but the more dugri and straightforward you can be, the better of a time you're gonna have here.
That's terrific, because one of the things that I'm doing with this podcast is having an Israeli word of the podcast. So Dugri is now
Yeah,
the word for the podcast, and that's to be more straightforward and to be Israeli. I love it. I love it.
yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you, Yoni. So we're gonna have you back, God willing, on the other side of my Aliyah, once I get my citizenship, and I get to utilize the Nefesh BNefesh
Great,
services when I make Aliyah. So there's all sorts of things like
awesome.
tax benefits, right? And when you're buying a new house or you're buying a car, and all sorts of things that will be helpful for people, particularly when you start making the actual physical move as well with your stuff. Which we're going to talk about that on the next one.
Absolutely, and it's. I'm glad you said that, because the next time we'll speak, either it'll be with me or one of my colleagues from our post Aliyah team. So up until now, we've spoken all about pre Aliyah and getting you ready for Aliyah, but we've got a whole other department that helps with all of those next steps, whether it's a bank account or healthcare or all of your rights and benefits that we didn't discuss this time. So there's certainly a lot more material to discuss, and looking forward to keeping the conversation going with you, David.
Excellent. All right. Thank you, Yoni. Really appreciate your being part of the podcast. Thank you again, Yoni. Thank you, Nefesh BNefesh, for allowing Yoni to come onto the show. Next episode is going to be all about bringing my dog, Dolly. Bringing Dolly was not quite as straightforward as I thought it was going to be. So stay tuned next time. I think we'll also have a guest, our new vet here in Israel, to share some information about what you got to do once you get your animal to the Holy Land. Thank you. And please subscribe. Please share this with other people who might be interested. And see you next time. This has been a Dellett production for Lightboat Media.